So I asked you which video you guys wanted me to make next, and the slight edge went to these watch part pendants. So if you've heard me talk about them, you know I sold a few at my last craft show. This is the only one I have left. And so I was kind of excited to make a few more anyway. So in this video, I'm going to go over a few of the basics of making these watch part pendants. But really there are no rules, and so you can definitely use your imagination on making your own. So the first thing, of course, is that you need some old watches, and I've already taken the watch faces out of all of these because I made quite a few earring sets a little while back. If you might have seen that video also. For the pendants, you kind of want to go with the larger watch casings just because you can put more in them and they're a little bit more fun to work with, but you can certainly use smaller ones as well. Now I know that I've been able to get the backs off of all of these because I did get the watch faces out. It can be a little bit tricky to get the backs off. Sometimes it just depends on the kind of back that you have. The other thing you want to consider is you want to be able to get the watch band off of the watch. So I usually stick with fabric or leather watch bands just because they're a lot easier to remove from the watch casing. And the one thing I do recommend is that you leave the band on until you've popped the back off the first time, just because it does allow you to hold on to something and it's a little safer, I think. So when I'm removing the backs of the watches, I like to grip the watch with cloth just to protect my hand. And they do make tools to pop the backs off, but I've actually found that an old paring knife works the best for me just because it's nice and thin and I can usually get it between the back and the watch casing itself. And once you have it kind of hooked in there a little bit, all you need to do is twist the blade a little bit to pop the back off. Now, if you're doing more than one, you're going to want to be sure to keep track of which back goes with which watch piece. So now that I have the back popped off, I can go ahead and just use my scissors to cut the watch band off. And if you are starting with a new watch and you pop the back off for the first time, all you need to do is pull the watch works out of the watch. And you may have to break the winding pin to get all the pieces out, but it's fairly easy just to pull those pieces out once you have the back off. And then to make the diorama, whether you're putting a picture in or something else, you can just start building your design in your back of your watch casing. And you just need to be aware of how thick of pieces you can put inside. So you'll want to check periodically to make sure that everything's fitting correctly. So to get prepared for this video, I just kind of went searching around my house looking for all kinds of little small tchotchkes. So these are some jewelry findings that I've found just to have to kind of look through and get inspiration from. These are sort of a crazy idea, but I have these tiny little rubber bands and I thought, they would fit inside of the watch casing, so maybe that'll be cute. I also gathered up all of my glitter and sequins. A few more options that I have. I also thought maybe I could use some glitter glue. Here's more of my sequins. I've got some stars and some bigger, these are kind of Christmassy colors, but who knows, they might work. Got a bunch of tiny little colored sequins. I don't know if I'll use these, but I grabbed some small washers. I have some little tiny safety pins. I also grabbed my air dry clay just because I can mold tiny little shapes if I get inspiration to do that. I have some dried flowers that I might try to use in one of the styles. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I love to work with aluminum cans. So I have this little flower shape that I've cut out of the aluminum cans that I might try to use. Here's a few more little sequin and leaf shapes. Some of these are too big, but some of these little tiny aluminum can sequins might work. I've got some big pieces of dried puffed rice here. I've used these before actually in some of the pendants. And also some little split pea shapes. And then I've got a whole bunch of, little watch parts. I've got some watch faces that are left over. I've got some of the little, what are these called? The little thing that you wind your watch with or set the time with. Some of the mechanisms from the watches. So just all the little tiny tchotchkes that I could find around my house to draw inspiration from. You can probably think of some other ideas, so search around your house and see what you can come up with. So I've got my work center set up here. I've got all of my little tchotchkes around me and a little workspace to work on. And the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of start working with all of the supplies I have, sort of matching them up and seeing what combinations I like before I start worrying about how they fit in the watch parts. So I'm just grabbing the colors that I like, matching pieces together here, just really playing around and sort of handling and looking over all of my little pieces that I've collected and combining them in ways that I find aesthetically pleasing. I am keeping in mind that I want to keep everything very small, but at this point I'm just matching up things that kind of coordinate together to start generating some ideas for how to fill the pendants. At this point, I wasn't ready to commit to a lot of things, but I was ready to glue a couple of small pieces together and to fill the back of one of the watch parts with some of my glitter glue. I also embossed a little piece of aluminum that I knew I wanted to put into one of my pieces and glued on a little sequin to the center of it. And for one of them, I tried adding some air dry clay, and I thought I could I wanted the background to be black. I thought I could mix the paint in with the air dry clay, but that was a very bad idea. So I ended up just filling the back and then painting it a little later so that I had a nice dark background. So this is where I've gotten to. I kind of have a conceptual idea of what I want to do with all of the pieces, but a lot of the pieces aren't glued together yet. So before you do any real assembly, you need to determine which direction you want your pendant to hang. So I've set up mine to have 5 of them be vertical and 5 of them to be horizontal. And the reason you want to make this decision is because when you put the back on your watch face, you want to be sure that you're lining up this little notch with the hole. Sometimes they'll go back together if you don't do that, but you do want to just be aware that you may need to pop them back together in that alignment. So in this case, I'm going to have this be vertical. So I just want to make sure that when I'm assembling everything that I'm keeping the base of the watch aligned correctly. So for this one, I just have kind of an old watch face part and a little pendant that I'm throwing in there. And I'm kind of thinking I may paint the back of the watch face a darker color just to make the pieces pop a little bit more. But that's kind of my basic look for this one. This particular one is the one that I put the air dry clay in, and I've painted it black. I may put another coat of black on there, I'm not sure. And then I just have a washer and a button that are going to fit in there as well. And a little piece of puffed rice that I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to put that in there. I may paint it before I finish that up. This one I painted the back of, and I just have a bunch of little watch parts in there. Because I've broken down so many watches, I have a bunch of these pieces that have the mechanisms in them, and some of them don't have as many fun pieces. A lot of them have the newer, I think you probably didn't wind them. This one seems like an older one that didn't have a battery in it, and there's a lot of really fun little pieces in these if you can get them open. So that's what a lot of the pieces in this one are. Then in this one, I did paint the back. Not sure if I like the back. I may make it darker. I'm not really sure, but this is a piece of aluminum that I embossed. I've got some more little puffed rice and a split pea in there that I'm going to paint. And then I did use a couple of little dried pieces of flour for this one also. This one is the one that I put all of that glitter glue in, and you can see that it dried in sort of a splotchy way, so I don't know if I'm going to do something with the back of that. But I just have another little glittery watch face in there, a little red rubber band, a little red piece of aluminum can that I punched a little circle sequin out of. I've got one of my star sequins and a little, sort of this little red rhinestoney thing that I'm going to use to assemble this pendant. And then this one I'm making little pie-shaped glitter sections out of, so I need to finish that up, and I'm not entirely sure what else I'm going to put in there. This is another one of the sort of steampunk looking pendants with a lot of the watch parts. I think this is the piece that allowed you to wind your watch if you had one without a battery. Here's just some more kind of steampunk looking things. This was part of a watch face. I've got the little mechanism in there, a grommet. Not entirely sure how all that's going to fit together, but that's the concept for that one. This one I did go ahead and glue a little whatever the knob is on your watch that you wind and set the time with. And I glued that to the center of this watch face, and then I've got a bigger watch face and some rubber bands in there. And this one has a couple of watch faces. I did go ahead and put a little bit of glitter and some rhinestones onto this little Minnie Mouse. And then I made another little clay mouse head for this particular one. So I've got a bunch of glues out here. I've got some super glue. I've got this super weld, which is a resin glue. I may not use this one because you need to be able to get the light to the glue to secure things, but it might come in handy. I've also got my collection of Mod Podge. I've got gloss and matte here. And I've also got my super gloss, which I really love because it's just extra thick. I've got my go-to glue here, the E6000. I'm sure I'll be using that to assemble some of these. And I've also got some glue dots because I think I might want to separate some of the pieces and just add a little bit of dimension in some cases. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble all of these, and then we'll be back to finish up the watch casings and put them together. So I've finished gluing all of my little dioramas together, and the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I get the crystals of my watch parts very clean. So I'll go ahead and clean those off before I snap all of my backs back onto the casings. And if you run into a problem where they don't quite want to snap back on because you have things a little too thick, you can probably carefully glue the back side if you need to, but ideally you're going to be able to pop the backs back on. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is I did use mostly my E6000 glue and this Mod Podge Super Gloss, and I just, on a couple of cases like this one, sort of filled the back with the Mod Podge after I'd glued everything in place. So I don't know if you can see this. It gives kind of a raised and little bit of a resin look to the piece. Now it's not perfect by any means. It's definitely a little bit uneven, and it might have even cracked a little bit in a spot or two, but I kind of like the way it looks. It's sort of got a filled in look that looks a little bit like resin, and I did it on this piece as well with all of my glitter. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all of my watch crystals and snap the backs together, and then we will be ready to finish up the pendants. So that's how you make the pendants, but there are a variety of ways to attach the chains to your pendants, and also some other things that you can do to add a little bit more pizzazz to your jewelry pieces. So I'm going to show you how I finished up all of my pendants just to give you some inspiration. So of course, this is the first one that we started with, and it's the simplest pendant to make. You just can insert your favorite photo, and then I attached the jump rings and this little sequin button with some E6000 glue. For this Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse version, I just added a little bit of chain, again with some jump rings, and then I just left the chains hanging off of the side of the watch casing, which is another way that you can attach the chain. I did use fairly big jump rings. If you're going around the part of the watch casing, you probably need a 9 or 10 millimeter jump ring. Here is a similar version with just a plain bottom, nothing dangling off the bottom. This is one of my steampunk styles, and again I just slid the jump rings on and glued them with some E6000 glue. For this one, I'm hoping it will dry out okay. I don't think it was completely, the Mod Podge that I put in there, I don't think it was completely dry, so it's kind of fogged up the crystal a little bit. And I did actually have to glue this back on. I did use my super weld glue to attach the back of this, so I can't pop it open, so I'm hoping that it will dry out. But another way that you can attach the chains is by making your own kind of jewelry bales, which is what I did here with some 20 gauge wire. I just made some flat coils and a little loop so that I could hang this from the center of the watch instead of from the sides. And this last one is a similar idea. I just took two short pieces of chain and then made the pendant with another jump ring and then attached them to a chain. So this one will swing on the chain. And then I have the vertical styles as well. For these, I did have to use a little bit of E6000 glue just to attach the jump rings because you don't want the watch sliding around and kind of not hanging straight. And for this particular style, I didn't glue the pieces in. I just kind of left them to rattle around inside of the watch casing. So that's just another variation of things that you can do. For this one, I did a similar jewelry bale kind of style, but I did loop the chain through the watch. What is this part? The watch pin. I guess they're watch pins that hold the watch band on. But I didn't want this chain to slide over to the corners of the watch pin, so they're kind of, it's held in the middle by this little jewelry bale that again I made out of the 20 gauge wire. And then I just added some of my safety pins to make some little fringe at the bottom. For my little flower one, I did glue the jump rings to the edges again so that this would hang straight. And then I added some little round beads that are made from aluminum cans. So that's kind of a colorful version. For this one, I added a lot of jump rings and the buckle from the wristband of the watch to the bottom here. And then I added a bunch of jump rings at the top. And then the chain is threaded through all of the jump rings so it can swing and hang straight when it's hanging around your neck. And it has a nice little movement to it. And this is a similar one. I did glue the jump rings again. I used E6000 glue on most of these because I just wanted the, I just like it the best. It's a little bit flexible, so if the glue can give a little bit and it won't just snap off and come unglued like some of the harder glues. And then again, I attached the wristband buckle to the bottom of the watch. So those are just some of the ideas that you can use for making these pendants. I'm sure there's a ton of other ideas out there, and I hope you've drawn a little bit of inspiration from this today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.